This video is brought to you by Esker. Stick around until the end of the video to find out more about them. 2022 was a fantastic year for gaming. There were so many awesome games that I got to play. And I wanted to make a video about my favorite games that I played this year, especially because we've got the Game Awards coming up. Now, these games are not all Game Awards nominees, but they are all fantastic games. So here's my list of 10 awesome games that I played in 2022 that absolutely blew me away. Before I actually get to the list, though, I just want to mention that I've got an upcoming collaboration with some other creators here on YouTube. Stick around until the end of the video to find out more about that. Alright, let's get started. Now, these are not in any particular order. This is the order that I thought of them in. This is not a ranked list, but I am going to start with one of my favorite games of all time, and that's Monster Hunter Sunbreak. Now, Monster Hunter Rise is my favorite Monster Hunter game, and Sunbreak just expands upon it in so many awesome ways. I dumped about 50 hours into the expansion, and I could have put way more into it had I not gotten distracted by other stuff. The base game was already pretty amazing, but the addition of new abilities, new monsters, and new locations was really great. I especially loved the way that they gave you more ways to unlock the ability to move around the map faster, meaning that you can get in, hunt a monster, and get out really quickly if you knew your way around. In the base game, I was mostly hammer and hunting horn. I tried quite a few other combos, but I think I ended up settling on sword and shield in Monster Hunter Sunbreak. I love the new skills that they added, and it's just really fun. The cool thing about Monster Hunter is that each of the different weapons feels different. So as you're playing the game, if you decide that you don't like the way that combat is feeling, try other weapons and you're eventually going to find one that really matches you. My favorites are the hammer, the hunting horn, sword and shield, and probably the light bowgun. Monster Hunter Rise is easily my favorite in the series, and Sunbreak made everything about Monster Hunter Rise even better. Now, I know that I'm super late to the party with this one. It did not come out in 2022, but I finally, just last month, broke down and picked up Hades to play on my Steam Deck. And man, I was about to say, why didn't anybody tell me about this sooner? But everybody told me about this sooner, and I just didn't listen to them. This game is fantastic. If you've been living under a rock, or if you've just ignored this game like I did, Hades is an isometric roguelike with some really compelling combat. It has beautiful art and fantastic voice work. The combat is really fast, and each weapon that you unlock has a different feel to it. As you make your way to the surface, I'm not done with the game yet, the gods of Mount Olympus randomly show up and give you a boon that makes you more powerful. They're randomly generated, so each time that you run through the game, you are progressively building a completely different build than the last time that you went through. But I never felt like I had a build that felt weak to me. I always felt very powerful, and the combination of the weapon and the boons that you get from the gods makes every run feel like a unique experience. If you haven't picked it up, go check it out, because Hades is fantastic. Next up is Cult of the Lamb. This one snuck up on me. I had heard people mention the game quite a few times, but I never looked into it. And then when I finally saw it, I was like, oh, this is right up my alley. It's a fantastic combination of genres, where on one hand, you're going into randomly generated dungeons in order to get supplies and followers for your cult. But then when you come out of the dungeon, you have to manage the village where all of your followers live, and you gotta tell those villagers what they have to do. They may need to go mine stone or wood or pray to you, or they have to clean the village or build structures or collect taxes or a whole bunch of other stuff. Not only are they the way that you get things done, but they're also a resource. You can build your character to sacrifice the lives of your followers instead of dying while you're in a dungeon. So if you get killed by a boss, you can say, actually, I think Frank has to go, and he'll die instead, and you can continue. Now, this might actually make your followers upset, and they will start believing in you less, but you can always put them in jail in order to make them believe. In addition to that, you have a whole bunch of branching tech trees to fill out as you play. So the way that your cult and my cult turn out would be vastly different. The graphics are hand-drawn art style, almost like Paper Mario looking stuff, And there's a reason that this game was nominated at the Game Awards. It's definitely one of my favorites of the year. My biggest problem with Smash Brothers is that it's trapped on Nintendo consoles, and there's been no shortage of Smash clones out there, and some of them are fun, but most of them are fairly dry, and I'm not a fan of. But Multiverses changes the game. Before we get to the characters, which is absolutely a huge draw of the game, we have to get the mechanics right, and Multiverses does that in spades. Yes, they take quite a few pages, hell, even full chapters out of the book of Smash Brothers, but they do put their own spin on it. For instance, each character has a class, and the game is really focused on 2v2 rather than solo play or free-for-all. Your team is important. As you play the game, you unlock talents for your character, and at the beginning of the match, you can choose which talents to equip based on who your teammate is and who you're going up against. Then there's the characters. I think if they used generics for this game, it would have been largely ignored, and that would have been a huge shame. But luckily, this is backed by Warner Brothers, which means they have access to a ridiculous number of characters. So you've got Shaggy and Velma and Batman and Spike from the Gremlins and Black Adam, and they're constantly adding more characters. The characters are on a rotating list where, this week these characters are free, and next week these characters are going to be free. And if you want to own a character so that you can play with them whether they're on the free list or not, you can just pay for them with the coins that you earn by playing. This is exceedingly similar to games like Heroes of the Storm and other MOBAs. Multiverses is fast, it's fun, it's free, and it is absolutely, without a doubt, my favorite fighting game this year. Honestly, I don't think that there's been an indie game that has captured the zeitgeist of the internet like Vampire Survivors did this year. I mean, maybe it's because of the bubble that I'm living in, but everybody that I was talking to online was always talking about how awesome Vampire Survivors is. And if you hear the game described to you, it just doesn't do it justice. To me, it was described as a game where you just move your character and you don't push any buttons and you try to move for as long as you can. And if you think that sounds terrible, you're right, but it's actually really fun. It's a combination of relaxing and intense all at the same time, which is a very weird thing to say. Vampire is very retro looking, and you do control a hero on a battlefield. You move around with the left stick, and your character auto attacks based on the weapons they have and which direction they might be facing. If you level up, you use a choice of one of 3 random weapons. You can also get weapons by finding chests, and over time, as you play, you start to get a build where you're focusing on perhaps a garlic build, which has lots of AoE, or a dagger build for high damage in the direction that you're facing. The longer you play, the tougher the monsters get, and the easier it is to get overwhelmed. I have lots of hours in this game, and I feel like I've hardly scratched the surface. It's the perfect pick up and play for 10 minutes kind of game, and did I mention that it's only $5? I really struggled over whether or not I would include this game on the list, and that's Overwatch 2. The reasons that I struggled with whether or not I would put this on here was I don't like the things that I've heard about what it's like working at Activision Blizzard, and B, it's just Overwatch 1, but Overwatch 1 was my favorite multiplayer shooter of all time, and playing Overwatch 2 has reminded me all of the reasons why. Originally, I wasn't going to play it. I only installed it because it's free and my son was playing it a bunch, so I figured we could play together. Next thing I know, I finished the Battle Pass. I've never finished a Battle Pass ever on anything, even games that I absolutely adore. Overwatch 2 completely sucked me in, and that just one more game mentality grabbed me, got its hooks into me, and just did not let me go. Now, if you've ever played Overwatch 1, it is absolutely the same game with some slight tweaks. But like I said before, that's my favorite multiplayer shooter of all time, so that's a good thing. I know people hate the monetization model, but at the end of the day, you're paying for cosmetics that have no effect on gameplay. So it doesn't bother me that they're charging $25 $10 for a skin because I just won't give them money for that. Each and every character feels powerful and fun, and every time I think, okay, I've nailed down my main, but somebody on the team has already picked them, so I've got to play somebody else. And then as I'm playing with somebody else, oh my gosh, this character feels awesome as well. Okay, let's see if we can line this shot up the way it was before. I was in the middle of editing this video, and I realized I completely left out the segment about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge. I loved Turtles in Time. I remember dumping mountains of quarters into that. My friends and I would ride our bikes up to the mall, and we would play that for as long as we could. That game was fantastic. Dotemu, if that's the way you say it, took everything that I loved about Turtles in Time and made it even better for Shredder's Revenge. The art direction of the game is phenomenal. Every level is jam-packed with dense detail that makes it feel alive. The animations are wonderful and the combat flows really well. Of course, the music is top-notch as well. And the game offers both an arcade mode, which is very much like the traditional game, but also a story mode, so you can save your progress. As you play through the game, you'll level your characters up, getting access to more powerful moves, and there's lots of characters to play. You have the original 4 turtles, and in addition to that, you finally can play as Master Splinter, April O'Neil, and Casey Jones. You can play with up to 6 people at once, which puts an unreasonable amount of carnage on the screen, almost non-stop. I played through it solo, and then I played through it again in arcade mode online with a full group. You can finish the game in about 3 hours, but there's a lot of replay value just for going through and leveling up all of the characters. Now, technically, Rogue Legacy 2 came out last year in early access, but it hit its 1.0 this year, and so I've been playing that game a bunch. In fact, when I first got my Steam Deck, I almost never shut that game off. I would just put the Steam Deck to sleep, leave it running, come back, pick up right where I left off, and just continue playing. If you've played the first Rogue Legacy, then you know what to expect. It's, of course, a roguelike where you have randomly generated character. You can equip certain gear based on the class that you have, and then you go into a randomly generated dungeon to take out the bosses. Each time you kill a boss, you unlock an ability that lets you explore deeper into the dungeon. It's a side-scrolling action game, and everything looks hand-drawn, although I think it's actually based on 3D models. The game is super addictive, and you'll definitely suffer from a one more run mentality. The first one was an amazing game, and I feel like they've stepped up in every single thing for the second one. Rogue Legacy 2 is awesome. I mean, what other game would give you the choice between heading into battle as a chef or being a bard that can only play notes by bouncing off of stuff? Rogue Legacy 2 is fantastic. Pick it up if you haven't. The first Shovel Knight game was one of my favorites of all time. I played through the whole thing on my own, and then I played through the whole thing again with my son. It's a fantastic experience, and you absolutely should check it out. But I want to talk about Shovel Knight Dig instead. Shovel Knight Dig takes the side-scrolling retro-inspired game and tips it over, and now you have to dig down. Yacht Club Games nailed it. It's yet another roguelike, which I guess is my favorite genre these days. But anyway, you play as Shovel Knight, and each run is randomized. You have to dig your way down to the bosses and try and take them out. As you go, you earn gems, which you can spend to become more powerful as you run into shops. In addition, you have to keep an eye out for keys, because if you have 3 keys at the end of the level, you get a huge bunch of gems and a boost to your health. When you die, you lose some of your loot, but you can get those gems back on your way down again. You can also spend money at the surface in order to go to a specific level or buy armor that has different abilities. There are lots of customization in each run. The art direction is perfect, the music is top-notch, and the combat is satisfying. If you enjoyed the first Shovel Knight, then Shovel Knight Dig is absolutely a no-brainer. Last on the list is Cursed to Golf. I've talked about it on the show a few times, but essentially you play a championship golfer who is struck by lightning mid-swing on the 18th hole as you're about to cinch the championship. You then go to Golf Purgatory. In Golf Purgatory, you have to continue to play through 18 rounds of golf. If you fail to hit par, you go back to the beginning and start all over again. Anyway, you are greeted by this giant ghost man, and you have to play golf in order to come back to life. You golf through randomly generated environments, and there's special abilities that you have that can stop a ball dead, or steer it around, or make dynamite explode on the course. In addition to that, you also have boss fights. It's a really fun side-scrolling golf game that has all kinds of charm and has a very well-done retro style. If that sounds good to you, then definitely check out Cursed to Golf. So when I made this list, I guess I didn't really think about genres. I just picked my favorite games, and I guess that randomly generated content was my jam this year. So what do you guys think of the list? What games would you add? What were your favorite games that you played in 2022? Let me know in the comment section down below. Before we get out of here, let's take a second to thank the sponsor of this episode, Esker, and then when we come back, I want to tell you about the collaboration that I'm working on. This video is sponsored by Extra. Extra makes wallets with a twist. They all have this little button on them, and when you push that button, your credit cards all pop out. You can see all of your cards at once, grab exactly the one that you're looking for, and slide everything else back in. They don't come out when you shake them, they only come out when you push the button. So you can rest assured that all of your stuff is secure in an Extra wallet. They have tons of options. I chose the carbon fiber wallet because I like the way it looks, but they also have metal wallets and leather wallets, and if you're looking for really good gift ideas, make sure you check out the link in the description down below. So get up to 40% off Extra wallets this Christmas by using the code NerdNest at checkout, or just click on the link in the description down below. Big thank you to Extra for supporting this channel, and if you want to support our channel, then support our sponsors. Okay, so I gave you my favorite games that I played this year, and if you want to see more like that, then I've got a collaboration coming up over on the Steam Pals channel. Make sure to check out that channel and subscribe, and don't forget to check out the links in the description down below and support the sponsor of this episode, Esker. Anyway, stay rad, everybody.